am reacting to your Monday Night Raw Hot Takes. Hot Takes is a weekly video series where I give you all a platform to be able to voice your thoughts, whether those are good thoughts, bad thoughts, or everything in between about the world of professional wrestling. So if you'd like to be featured in the next episode of Hot Takes, make sure that you're following me on X because I ask for your hot takes there after every episode of Raw, SmackDown, and every single WWE Premium Live event. Now, if you are looking for my full 30-minute review of this episode of Monday Night Raw with footage, it's already up and available on the Patreon. Over there, we upload the Raw reviews and SmackDown reviews and a whole bunch of watch-alongs that use actual footage because we can't post them here because they would just get blocked due to copyright. So go check it out. Patreon.com/SantiZap. Link in the description, link in the pinned comment as well. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I am incredibly confident that you're going to fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. All right, let's get started and read your stupid shit. That Gunther and Jay promo highlights the problem with 4 PLEs in less than 2 months. They just told us Logan ain't winning at Saturday night's main event so that they can have a proper build to the Raw after Money in the Bank. I completely agree with this sentiment. Now, don't get me wrong. I never once believed that Jay Uso was going to lose to Logan Paul, but I would love for the WWE to at least pretend like there was a possibility. I would like for the WWE to at least try to create some drama between Jay Uso and Logan Paul, but it looks to me like the effort being given by the WWE to get you excited for this match at Saturday night's main event is quite literally zero. They didn't build it last week because instead they focused on the Seth Rollins interaction. They didn't build it this week because instead they focused on the Gunther interaction. So when the hell are they going to build this match? Now, I've been fooled multiple times now by Saturday night's main event, and I will not be fooled any longer. I am strictly going into Saturday night's main event as if it is basically just a big old glorified house show. I am expecting no title changes. I'm not expecting any debuts. I'm not expecting anything that can properly move the needle or shape storylines moving forward, and this is a perfect example. You also talk about how this is one of the fundamental problems with having so many PLEs. It's not going to get any better. We have about 10 nights of WWE premium programming between now and the end of August, and we only have 12 weeks between now and the end of August. So that is a lot of premium live event nights of professional wrestling in a very short amount of time. So it's not just going to be a problem here. It's basically going to be a problem that snowballs throughout the rest of the summer. But yeah, basically telling us that Gunther gets the next crack at whoever wins here, you may as well just be putting up a billboard already that says Jay Uso versus Gunther. It's clear as day. Now, it's a little bit interesting, I will say, that they're not doing this at Money in the Bank, instead doing it on Monday Night Raw, because that means that by the time that that match actually happens, that the Money in the Bank briefcase holder will now have entered the conversation. They've entered the group chat and are now part of the ecosystem. Unless, of course, they do the same thing as last year and burn it within 12 minutes. WWE should just make Raw 2 hours when needed, as they have the ability with Netflix. The show had way too many recaps and filler. I completely agree with the sentiment. I kind of feel like Raw can just sort of end when it needs to end. It doesn't need to end at an arbitrary time. And there are certain episodes, this one was a more egregious example, where they're just sort of stat padding and they're just kind of adding things that don't really need to be there for the sake of keeping us there until about 2.5 hours into the show. This episode of Monday Night Raw did not have enough content to run for 2.5 hours. You're right. This had a tremendous amount of filler. It had a bunch of recaps of last episode of Monday Night Raw. Then it had recaps of Backlash. We even gave Pat McAfee his own entrance and his own entire segment for some weird reason. I'm sure we'll talk more about that here. But this episode of Monday Night Raw was really just dragging its feet to try and get to the finish line. When honestly, had this episode just ended at the 2-hour mark, I feel like it would have been received a lot better by the fan base, because as it stands, it just sort of felt like they were dragging their feet and there was a ton of filler here. I don't normally love saying this, but if there's an episode of Monday Night Raw that you can get away with missing, it was probably this one. There really wasn't much that moved the needle. There really wasn't much in terms of storytelling that you would be missing, that would be crucial, that would be impossible to catch up on. So if you missed this episode, honestly, you're probably pretty good just watching the YouTube highlights. With the likelihood of us getting Jay versus Gunther on June 9th, I have a feeling that we could see Goldberg return and cost Gunther the match. This can set up their match at either Night of Champions or SummerSlam. Listen, I'm fine with the idea of running with Gunther versus Goldberg. I mean, I've just sort of accepted that that's the end destination where we're eventually going to go, whether it's in a Saudi show or SummerSlam. Gunther versus Goldberg is something that I've already tattooed in my brain. It's just inevitable. But if that is where they plan on going, right, why do it here, if not do it where it made significantly more sense, which was the Backlash match against Pat McAfee. When you really sit down and analyze the Pat McAfee versus Gunther match, it was missing the return of Goldberg. And I don't think that this was a situation where fans online fantasy booked themselves into a disappointment. I just firmly believe that the only way to not be disappointed by that match was to have Goldberg in there. Now, don't get me wrong, Pat McAfee versus Gunther was a good match. It was entertaining at the very minimum, but what did it accomplish? It didn't move anyone forward. All it did was make Pat McAfee, look stronger? This guy doesn't sell t-shirts. This guy doesn't sell tickets. This guy's not a performer for you, so why are we trying to put him over? And then Gunther really just stayed in the same place. He didn't move forward or backwards. So when it comes to what they should have done after that match to really feel like it was a match that progressed things, I feel like Goldberg was better suited there than better suited here in this June 9th match. If anything, I feel like the Money in the Bank briefcase holder would probably be somebody that makes more sense as an interference on the June 9th match. Cross's push should have started by now. I hope that they don't fumble him. Look, everything that I'm seeing just basically says that there is no interest from WWE to actually push Carrie and Cross. Like, look at the actual clues that we have here. This is a guy that's getting pops in the arena. This is a guy that pretty much the entire internet wants to see push. This is a guy that is actually literally driving revenue to the WWE. He is the top merch sales guy in the WWE at the moment, the highest selling t-shirt guy, and they still won't push him? This is entirely confusing to me. I made my video about the Money in the Bank ladder match and who I thought might be in it, and I left out Carrie and Cross, and a lot of people were kind of upset with me, like, how could you not include Carrie and Cross? Is there anything that WWE is showing you that makes you believe that they will? Is there anything that WWE is showing you that makes you believe that this Carrie and Cross push is actually happening? Because unfortunately, I think that the answer is no. And that to me is absolutely insane. I'm a big believer in the world of business to just let somebody sink or swim. If Carrie and Cross is going to fail and fail miserably, at least give him the opportunity to fail. But right now, he's not being given the opportunity to sink or swim. They just are keeping him in the back for, frankly, no reason that I can immediately discern. So it goes back to that thing that Triple H says, you know, we like to hear from the fans in the arena. Well, they're chanting and want Carrie and Cross, and you're still not providing him. So what's up with that? I'm getting real tired of the audience not reacting to Julia. Barely got a reaction when she appeared to help Roxan on Raw after Mania, and pretty much been the same thing every week. I'm really hoping that after the match tonight, it's opened people's eyes as to how good she is. I don't really blame the fans for not reacting to Julia. Me, you, and probably the majority of the people that are watching this video, we know who Julia is. We know that she absolutely can ball whenever she's given the opportunity, and we know that she is awesome. However, the way that they presented Julia is very confusing because in commentary, they still keep referring to her as one of the NXT girls. So is she called up? Is she not called up? Because I don't know if she is or isn't. And if I'm a more casual fan, why would I get emotionally attached to somebody that might just disappear in the blink of an eye and go back down to NXT? Like, I need them to make it clear. Is Julia and Roxanne Perez on the main roster, and are they here to stay? And I will say, for as many flaws as the concept of the draft has, which they usually call people up that they have no plans for, it does create an expectation and an aura of excitement when you get to see this new person. The way that Julia debuted with pretty much no build-up, no hype, just sort of appearing, does make it a little bit more difficult for the more casual fan base, which, by the way, is what makes up the majority of the people that are in the arena, to really immediately pop for it or to be emotionally attached to it. So I think it's going to be a while before you start getting, you know, that crowd positive reaction towards Julia, or any reaction, because she's not even like getting booed, but she's great out there. She looked great in the main event, and she will continue to have the love and admiration from the people that know who she is. But I have to admit, I don't think WWE has done a great job at showcasing why people should care about Julia. Oh my God! Oh! Okay, that's filthy. That was and beautiful. Man, I love that spirit bomb. Oh, oh yeah. Woo! Oh, that, folks, was a sneak peek of this week's Wrestling is Cool Match Club, available exclusively on patreon.com/SantiZap. This week, we're looking at maybe the most insane backyard wrestling match that I've ever seen from BXW Backyard Wrestling. John Cena versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 23. CM Punk versus Raven from Ring of Honor in a Clockwork Orange Funhouse match. Keith Lee versus Penta from AAW Pro. And Will Ospreay versus Speedball Mike Bailey from TNA back in 2021. You're going to be getting all of this, plus the Raw reviews, the SmackDown reviews, the Wrestling is Cool podcast 3 days earlier than everywhere else, the currently ongoing Royal Rumble watch-alongs that we're doing, and now we're starting a new series where we're watching every single John Cena WWE Championship victory of his career. So come check it out. That's patreon.com/SantiZap. There's a link in the description or a link in the pinned comment. I'm confident that if you try it even for just 1 month, that you are going to fall in love with the content and the community. But that's enough. If you're already a patron, thank you so much for your support. Let's get you back to the video. So many people are coming after Jey Uso at once. WWE kind of needs to slow down a bit and get a storyline going, but I do appreciate how they're making Jey Uso feel important on Raw. Very true. I love the fact that people want this World Heavyweight Championship, but it does create maybe too many plates to try and balance at the same time, and inevitably one of those plates will just fall down and crack and break, because right now Jey Uso is balancing a storyline with Logan Paul, balancing the reignitement of a storyline with Gunther, and then balancing a story that involves Seth Rollins and that faction going on. That is a lot of things for champion Jey Uso to balance out, and inevitably one of those storylines is going to feel significantly less important, and right now the one that's suffering is the Logan Paul storyline, and maybe to the joy of many, because a lot of people didn't want to see this match anyway, so maybe it's not the worst thing to not put as much tender love and care into the match that a lot of people are kind of upset that it even exists in the first place. I was excited for Logan Paul versus Jey Uso, but WWE has done pretty much everything in their power to not allow me to get excited for this match. Roxanne and Julia should have won if they wanted us to buy into them being any sort of threat to anyone big. I agree, but I also don't agree with the sentiment that a lot of people have online that Julia and Roxanne are just jobbers now, that they're now they're fodder for the bigger names. Like, listen, dude, like they literally just got called up and they're already being paired up against two of the biggest names, not just on Raw, but literally the entirety of the WWE and all of women's wrestling around the world on the main event of Monday Night Raw. That to me is a giant vote of confidence. I don't think that screams, yeah, we're gonna bury you, pal. But I have to kind of agree, because I don't really see Roxanne and Julia as this big scary threat in the women's division, because all they've done is get chased off by Io Sky, Rhea Ripley, and lose their matches. So there's nothing that says like, yeah, you know, these are the ones that we've got to fear whenever their music hits. They could have probably won, especially if they want to sell me on a upcoming storyline and feud between Io Sky and Rhea Ripley. They could have lost because of dissension between the two, but I think that WWE is a little bit scared of making Io take the pin, and they definitely don't want Rhea Ripley, their big star, who got the biggest pop of the entire night, by the way. That crowd was really alive when Rhea Ripley came out. They don't want her taking a pin either, so I think it's kind of a rock and a hard place type of situation right now, but this situation that Roxanne and Julia are in are not making them look as strong as they probably ought to. The McAfee Glaze in the first half of Raw had me groaning. Dude, it got a little bit out of hand. After Backlash, the match between Gunther and Pat McAfee, I groaned at the show of respect from Gunther, like, really? All right, good for you, Pat. You really got put over. Now go back to commentary. And then what was crazy on this show is that before the Penta and Chad Gable match, Penta and Chad Gable got the commercial jobber entrance, and then they come back from commercial break to give Pat McAfee his own entrance. Why? I don't understand that. Yeah, here's the big star that we need you to actually care about. Forget the wrestlers. We want you to pop for the commentator. And then later on in the match, they do later on in the night, they do a recap of his match with Gunther. They give him his flowers. They allow him to stand up on the table and get cheers from everybody. And then they do the minute with Pat McAfee. Holy hell. That's a lot of Pat McAfee. That's coming from somebody that likes Pat McAfee. It just seems, I don't know, like ill-pointed spotlight. Like, spotlight the goddamn wrestlers, not the commentator. I always felt like it was the commentator's job to make the wrestlers look bigger than life, to make the wrestlers feel like stars. So it's weird to have this dynamic where WWE is trying to make the commentator the center of attention. I'm not a huge fan of that. Maybe I'm a little bit old school in that way, but I also groaned as you did. Finn needs a major change in his character, whether that be him being kicked out of the the Judgment Day and becoming a face, or reaffirming his stance as a heel and kicking Dominic and Liv out. As much as I like him, I can tell his star is starting to fade. Something big is needed, and it needs to happen soon. Hasn't this been the narrative about Finn Balor for like literally the past 2.5 years? It does sort of feel like right now the star is the dimmest that it's ever been. And I do think that moving away from the Judgment Day is the way to go. They might already be planting the seeds for that. We have seen Finn Balor and Roxanne Perez having conversations backstage in the background of different moments that are happening. So maybe Finn Balor is getting ready to start a different faction, maybe an offshoot of the Judgment Day, the Wolfpack Judgment Day, shall we say, or Temu Judgment Day, whatever it might be. But I do think that now is the time to really separate him away from the Judgment Day. He, in my opinion, in terms of overall star power, at least how WWE is presenting him, is getting dwarfed by Dominic Mysterio, and that's a crazy thing to say in its own. So I think we need to separate him from there and have him start something new from the beginning, because I think right now he's just sort of spinning his wheel. He's been spinning his wheels for a while, but right now it feels like he's spinning his wheels and stuck in dirt. With everything leading up to Saturday night's main event next Saturday, I have a strong feeling that Logan Paul is going to be Paul Heyman's third man alongside Rollins and Breakker. But then again, I can be proven wrong. What are your thoughts? I think it really depends. I feel like Logan Paul being the third man would be interesting if it's just like a one-off alliance, right? But to be the full permanent third man, I don't think that Logan Paul is the best addition, considering Logan Paul is not there every single episode of Monday Night Raw. Whoever is added to this faction literally needs to be there every single week alongside Braun Breaker and Seth Rollins. We cannot have weeks where Logan Paul is there and then he isn't, and then he takes a couple of weeks hiatus and then he appears. That would honestly really hurt the momentum of the faction. But if you wanted to add him, kind of like how Bronson Reed was added to the Bloodline for a one-off match against the babyfaces, I think I could maybe get behind that. But as a permanent third member, I'm going to put a wall up and absolutely veto that. So does everyone on the roster want to come after Jay now? Well, me personally, I would prefer to come before Jay, but that's just me. But hey, that's true. And I do think that everybody should want to come after Jay Uso's World Heavyweight Championship. That to me is the mark of an important championship. That to me is the mark of a champion that is a fighting champion that's willing to take on anyone and everyone at any moment. And you know what? For many of the concerns that I had about a Jay Uso championship reign, I feel like so far they're doing a pretty decent job at making him feel like an important champion and making the World Heavyweight Championship feel important. So yeah, it feels like everyone wants Jay Uso, everyone wants the championship, and to me that's a good thing. But it does create some problems when you're balancing too many plates at the same time. We've already talked about this. It kind of just forces you inevitably at some point or another to pull the parachute on one of those storylines, and right now the one that they've pulled the parachute on is Logan Paul versus Jay Uso. I had Raw in the background tonight, and I feel like I didn't miss anything. It just felt like a filler episode. It did feel like a filler episode, and I think it's weird that it was a filler episode considering this was an episode right after a big PLE in Backlash. We are 2 weeks away from Saturday night's main event and less than 4 weeks away from Money in the Bank. They didn't even start Money in the Bank qualifiers yet, which means that we're going to have like 3 episodes of Raws and SmackDown to really get the Money in the Bank storylines going and the field set for the ladder matches. It is a weird timing right now to have Saturday night's main event right there, and then of course Money in the Bank like 2 and a bit weeks later. It's not quite as bad, but it's kind of similar to what happened earlier on in the year where we had Saturday night's main event and then literally the weekend after it was the Royal Rumble. Look, that was kind of crazy considering they had Jay Uso announce himself for the Royal Rumble, but then also have a championship match the week before, completely spoiling that championship match. I feel like we have some similarities of things like that going on right now, with Jay Uso pretty much being penciled in to have this match against Gunther after Saturday night's main event. But yeah, I feel like you could have missed this episode. Like I said, I feel like you could watch your favorite YouTubers and get the recap and the feel of the show. You could probably just watch the YouTube highlights. This was a show that if you missed it, wasn't the end of the world. We need a permanent second announce table for the New Day. This to me is the most interesting thing about the tag team division. It's not the tag teams in the division. It's not the matches. It's not the feuds. It's literally the New Day on commentary. We need more of this. This is when the division and when the New Day have been at their absolute best since winning the tag titles. I still feel like they are at least trying with the division. At least they've got a little trifecta going on with the New Day, the Creeds, and War Raiders. But I still feel like this division needs more in terms of like interesting storylines, more in terms of promo time, more in terms of more teams being added to it. It still feels like it's just a skeleton, like a shell of a full-blown tag team division, but at the very least, they're starting. They're in step one. We'll see where this is, let's say, by the end of the summer. I would hope that that this division has maybe reached the levels of SmackDown, but I wouldn't be putting any money on it. Reminder that losing in the main event to your division's world champion and the biggest star in said division is not considered burying young talent. All flowers to Julia and Roxanne this evening. True, but no one's going to listen to you. The internet's going to be the internet. The internet's going to run with the narrative that they want, and the narrative that they're running with is that Io Sky and Rhea Ripley have now just little sistered the two up-and-comers, and now Julia and Roxanne Perez are useless and have been buried and will never be able to get over. That's, at the very least, the sentiment that's going on online at the moment. But yeah, of course, it doesn't mean getting buried. Julia literally debuted on the main roster in the main event against two of the biggest stars that the WWE has, and Roxanne Perez is literally 23 years old. She still has so much left in her career. Her career has barely even started. But hey, if you want to run with the narrative that they're being buried, so be it. Be miserable, I suppose, because this is just not what's happening. There's only less than 3 weeks until Money in the Bank, and there's no qualification matches or actual matches confirmed for the PLE. The thing is that Money in the Bank is, weirdly enough, one of the PLEs that you can get away with less storylines, because two of the biggest matches, the two biggest matches on the show in terms of time and in terms of scope and in terms of overall stakes are ones where like you don't really need to put that much thought and effort into the actual storylines going into the match. You just got to have a bunch of qualifier matches and then boom, put these men and women together and they'll put on a lightning awesome match. But the other stuff going on, the world title feuds, the mid-card feud, they didn't really get started here on this episode, and I still think it's because of this weird placement of Saturday night's main event. It's just creating this logjam in terms of preventing WWE from like properly building up to matches beyond Saturday night's main event, because if you build too much beyond Saturday night's main event and start creating storylines and feuds beyond Saturday night's main event, you might inadvertently just completely spoil Saturday night's main event, which is what they did with Logan Paul, Gunther, and Jay Uso. Was Becky's promo almost exactly like John's promo when he turned heel? Yeah, a little bit. I felt like the same sentiment was there, that I'm not the problem, you're the problem, the fans are the problem. But I thought that her promo was absolute dynamite. I thought it was fantastic, and I really liked the message of it, saying that, hey, I'm not Becky Hogan. How dare you call me that? She didn't say the name Becky Hogan, but this is what she's referring to people saying that she keeps talent down, referring to people saying that she doesn't put anybody over, that she prevents people from being able to make it in this industry. And I love that she said, fine, if you think that that's what I am, I'll be whatever you say I am. I am going to be this awful parasite. I am going to keep people down. And now, for the actual first time ever, the women in the locker room are actually going to feel what it's like to be kept down by the man. And personally, I love that she's leaning into this. I love that we're going to have this first ballot Hall of Famer, done it all already, be at the top of the card, trying to play a character that prevents the next generation of women from moving forward. She's going to be playing a gatekeeper, and I feel like her as the gatekeeper, the final boss of like the women trying to move up in the world in the WWE, I think she's perfect for it. Poor Ludwick. I thought he was finally getting screen time, but he didn't even get to talk before the Jay interruption. He is really talented and could easily be a regular on the card, but since the Penta feud, nothing out of him. I do think that he could be part of Money in the Bank. After last year's edition of Zoe Stark, seemingly out of nowhere, when WWE was barely using Zoe Stark and then they just added her to the Money in the Bank ladder match, I think anything and everything is possible. Literally, even if you've been getting no screen time, you could just randomly win your qualification match and be in Money in the Bank. That's what I firmly believe. So yeah, I would say that Ludwick Kaiser is probably in the running to be in the Money in the Bank ladder match. But yeah, man, I do feel like it's a little bit of a fall off for Ludwick Kaiser. They were literally talking about his fall off. Hey, last year you had a great year beating Sheamus, blah, blah, blah. But this year, oh wait, who fucking cares what you say? Something else with bigger stars is happening. I don't know what there is to do with Ludwick Kaiser. I look at everywhere that he could fit, and the whole show seems to be busy. And it's just weird, man, that they've got these talented folks like Carrie and Cross, like Ludwick Kaiser, that people want to see, and they're just being relegated to these commercial segments or just one-off background appearances. Saw this during Jay's entrance. They must like the podcast. Shout out to the Wrestling is Cool podcast, coolest wrestling podcast on the planet, available on all platforms. Thank you for bringing this on, man. I appreciate that. I think the backstage segment with Judgment Day, and towards end of the segment, JD, Raquel, and Carlito taught Dom about time zones, was hilarious. I mean, I think personally that time zones might just be a conspiracy theory. I haven't personally seen 2 time zones at the same time, so how do I know that there's multiple time zones? To me, Dominic Mysterio might just be enlightened. He might actually be an awake individual that understands more than just whatever the government feeds you, ladies and gentlemen. Trust me, like, start to ask questions. Are time zones a real thing? I don't know. Like, I don't know that I've seen any definitive proof that they are. But yeah, that was hilarious. I love that JD's like using the skull to show the rotation of the earth against the sun. That was great. Sami Zayn is 100% turning on CM Punk at Saturday night's main event. Zayn will be the 4th member of Seth Rollins' new faction. They're certainly teasing it, right? With hey, can we trust each other? Can you trust me? Can I trust you? I don't know. So they're already planting the seeds of these guys not being able to work together or trust each other. CM Punk already said, I don't know that I love this, considering I'm having a tough time trusting anybody. So they may have set this up for a Sami Zayn turn. However, I think the timings are weird. Saturday night's main event has not been the place where WWE does big storyline unveilments and moving the needle on storylines. So Sami Zayn turning heel at Saturday night's main event, teaming up with Punk, just seems a little bit out of place when you compare it to the other things that they've done on Saturday night's main event. And on top of that, I have a hard time visualizing Sami Zayn turning heel, considering the Saudi show Night of Champions is like a month and a bit away, and I feel like they're going to want him as a babyface there, considering he's incredibly beloved there. So I could see it, just not yet. All right, folks, thank you so much for watching this episode of Hot Takes. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Be wonderful people. Get out of here. Bye.